Hey, this is Jay Carper from American Torah, and I'm reading from Matthew chapter 19, verses 3 through 9. The Pharisees also came to Yeshua, testing him and saying to him, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason?" And he answered and said to them, "Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. The two shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let not man separate." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away?" He said to them, "Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery." There are a lot of questions in this passage that I think I need to address. A lot of misunderstandings, a lot of cultural things, or a lot of misunderstandings about the law itself. First, the question was about divorce for any cause. It wasn't about divorce for all causes. There were competing traditions among the rabbis in the first century, and one school of thought said that a man can divorce his wife for any reason whatsoever. He was the master of his home. He could say who was part of his house and who wasn't. And so if he found anything wrong with his wife, he could kick her out. Another school of thought said that, no, a man can't divorce his wife. The only justifiable cause is adultery. Yeshua here is siding with that second school for the most part. But the reference that he's actually using, the reference that they were questioning him about is from Deuteronomy 24 verse 1. When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some uncleanness in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house. And then it goes on to talk about what he should do after that, especially if she marries somebody else and then comes back. But let me first talk about the first part of Yeshua's answer when he says, "Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female?" Now that's a quote from Genesis 1 verse 27. So let me go all the way back there. I'm going to read a lot of different scripture verses for this one. Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. The first thing I want to point out here is that God did not create mankind as a spectrum of genders. Apart from the more technical use of the word gender in language, like gendered nouns and adjectives, in the context of human sexuality, there's male and there's female. That's it. There's no spectrum of genders. There are rare genetic disorders in which a person might be a hermaphrodite or a eunuch. Those were not created at the beginning. God did not create disease in the Garden of Eden. That was something that was caused by man's sin. Mankind created hermaphrodites and genetic chimeras. God's plan was that humanity would be male and female and nothing else. So corruption should never be celebrated. We don't celebrate when a person gets cancer. We don't celebrate when someone has cerebral palsy. What people call intersex, when someone has characteristics of both male and female because of a genetic abnormality or development problem, that shouldn't be celebrated. That's not something anybody should ever be proud of. It's a fact of life and something that those few people can't really control. So they shouldn't be demonized or ostracized for it either. But don't celebrate it. This is not a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's a corruption of God's design. God designed humanity as male and female. Nothing in between. And nothing on the outside. So then Yeshua says that because God created mankind, male and female, a man is supposed to leave his family and hold to his wife. And this is from Genesis 2:24. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Now the one flesh is mostly metaphorical. It means they should become one. They should become a family unit, united. The man leaves his mother and father. He creates a new house, a new thing with his wife. And God instituted this from the very beginning. The nuclear family, and the extended family too, for that matter. But the core of civilization is the nuclear family, husband and wife and their children. This is God's design and not something that should be taken casually. So the commandment, Moses' commandment in Deuteronomy 24 says that the man may put away his wife if he's found some uncleanness in her. This word is the Hebrew word erva, and it has to do with sexual immorality. It doesn't specify adultery necessarily, which in a biblical definition, not using the definition of the English word, but how the Hebrew word is used in the scriptures, means a man having sex with another man's wife. So adultery can really only happen with a married woman. It doesn't really matter if the man is married or not. He just can't, if he's not married to that woman and she's married to some other man, then that's adultery, and they're both guilty. So, but it could also refer to bestiality, incest, any kind of sexual perversion, really. So that's the context of the original commandment. And Moses goes on to say that if he divorces her, then she marries somebody else, and then he divorces her, the original husband can't marry her again. That's a sin also. There's no reconciliation after she's married somebody else. So the implication would be that if he divorced her for some cause that God didn't authorize, then if another man marries her, she's not really divorced in God's eyes. So then that man is committing adultery with her. And the first husband is making her into an adulteress by putting her into a situation where, in order to survive in a culture where women are dependent on men, she has to marry another man. So a man who unjustly puts away his wife makes his wife into an adulteress and makes some other man commit adultery with her if they're not fully cognizant of the situation. Now, she's not forced to marry another man unless her father or something happens and people are forcing her to do that. But she is in an untenable situation. She can't support herself. She can't support her children. She may have to go back and live with her parents, but what if her parents are elderly? What if they can't support her? So it puts her in a really bad situation. And any way you look at it, he has defiled his marriage by putting away a woman unjustly. This is what Yeshua is condemning here. And a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that Yeshua was saying Moses was wrong to allow this. But he's not saying that the man Moses allowed divorce. He's using Moses as a shorthand for the law of Moses. Now, Moses certainly is the one who gave this command, but he gave it at God's direction. Let me go back to the beginning of this book. All of Deuteronomy most of Deuteronomy is essentially a long speech, a recapitulation of the law by Moses. He's summarizing the whole thing and making sure that the Israelites understand how God's law applies in their lives. Going back to Deuteronomy 4, verse 40, Moses says, "You shall therefore keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which Yahweh your God is giving you for all time." And this passage in Deuteronomy 24 about divorce is a continuation of this same speech. It's not a separate day. It's not a different context. It's the same speech. Moses is saying all of these commandments that he's giving them in the book of Deuteronomy are from God. These are not Moses making stuff up. Life is paramount in God's law. Protecting the innocent, protecting people who can't protect themselves, not condemning the innocent. And, there is capital punishment in God's law. So even though God commands us to choose life, he also commands us to kill at times, but only under very specific circumstances. You must have at least 2 witnesses. The person you're going to kill must have committed a capital offense, or must be an enemy of your people who's trying to hurt you. War is a separate issue. But somebody accused of a crime, it must be a crime that God has says deserves death, and there must be at least 2 witnesses to the crime before you can convict and kill them. So life is paramount, but capital punishment is still an option. This isn't a contradiction. Marriage is important. It's central to God's plan for humanity. But divorce is still an option for some circumstances. Yeshua's main point is that marriage was instituted by God and given to us for our own benefit. And we have to protect it. We have an obligation to cultivate marriage, to try everything we can to save it. And it should only be destroyed when it's the only reasonable option left. Divorce is like death. God hates them both, but sometimes they're both necessary. God created all of mankind. He created the earth. And then when there was only one righteous family left on the earth, God destroyed it all. But not before then. He waited until there was only that one family left. In Sodom, he would have saved the whole city if there had just been 10 righteous men. But because there was only Lot, God destroyed it. God hates death, and he hates divorce. But he still allows it, and it's even necessary in some circumstances. This is Jay Carper from American Torah. Protect and cultivate your marriage and your family.